we are going to get some advice on how to avoid speeding tickets, particularly. There is a book, and the book says, Drive Without Fear of Getting Ticketed. And who tells us that? A former state trooper. That's who. He's Sergeant James M. Eagan, retired, New York State Police. You must have the New York authorities upset. You're not supposed to do this, Sergeant.
Well, not as much as you might think. Some of the police brass are upset with me, and obviously some of the politicians, but the road cops know very well that most of what I tell you in the book is exactly what they would want the average citizen to know when he gets pulled over. And they also know that basically it's not done in the interest of safety, but tickets are written in the interest of financial gain these days. They don't like it anymore in the general public in most instances.
Mike, is he close enough to the microphone? Is everything okay? All right. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. You're a young man, James Eagan. Why'd you retire from the job?
Well, call me Jim, if you would. I had my 20 years in. New York State permits their troopers to retire.
20 years? Would you go on the job when you were 10?
No, 23. I'm 44 now.
You look like a kid. You really do.
Well, it's the good life.
I suppose people tell you that all the time.
Not very often, but it sounds good. I'll let you keep it up if you want to.
Okay. Well, you don't look like the type of guy that would pull somebody over and say, let me see your driver's license. You don't look like that type of guy.
Good afternoon, sir. May I see your driver's license and registration, please?
Oh, my gosh, did you change? All of a sudden, the voice became authoritative.
Essentially, when a police officer walks up to a car, most of the time, he's acting. He may not even realize he's acting, but he's going through a little spiel each and every time. And you want to break that act up a little bit.
And that is the first thing you folks are instructed to ask is, may I see your driver's license?
It's funny, but because it's so repetitious, we do it so many times, each police officer gets into his own little spiel. And it's very rare that he alters from it. Most officers will ask a question like, do you know why I stopped you? Or do you know how fast you were going? Which is a little like saying, just stop beating your wife yet. There's really not a safe answer to it. But essentially, they say the same thing at almost every stop.
Jim, did you ever, in your 20 years with the New York State Police, did you ever stop anybody who admitted that he was speeding, just said, yeah, I was speeding, I was going too fast, and that was the end of it?
Well, sure, all the time. In fact, there's nothing wrong with being totally honest. Sometimes that can be very advantageous, particularly based on the type of personality where that works well with. Essentially, what I did in the book is two things, but half of the book is dedicated to how to deal with a cop once you do get caught. Yeah. And I tried to show you what the personality of the cop was and how to best deal with that personality.
So, this title of the book, is it just the publisher putting on a title that they think will help sell more books? Or can you honestly say, and you have an honest face, Jim, can you honestly say, if a person follows the advice, they will avoid tickets?
What I can honestly say, and incidentally, I made up the title, is that book is going to help you tremendously. It will reduce the chances of your getting a ticket. Nothing works 100%. If it did, I'd package it in another manner and sell it for a whole lot more.
But it's called a Speeder's Guide to Avoiding Tickets. Well, that seems like a contradiction. If you want to avoid tickets, don't speed. If you say, speeders, here's how you can avoid tickets. Okay, I can give advice. Speeders, here's how you can avoid tickets. Don't go over the speed limit. There, I just gave him advice.
That's wonderful advice if everybody's obeying it. But I had a subtitle at one time called Every Driver Speeds Sometimes, and it's true. I was just out on one of your roads, right along the edge of the city there. The speed limit was 50, and yet I was going 50. Everyone was roaring by me at 65 to 70. Yeah. Essentially, everyone speeds. The book was written for the interstate driver, and those speed limits are kept artificially low to enhance the abilities to be able to write the tickets.
In other words, they want to encourage the revenue that the tickets will bring in.
Which is another very big reason why I wrote the book.
Is New York guilty of that? Is New Jersey?
New York is outrageously guilty of it. They know very well that even at 65, the speed limit on some of our interstates would be a little bit on the low side. There's something called the 85 percentile rule. It's supposed to be used in most instances to determine what a speed limit should be. Essentially, it assumes that the average driver is an intelligent human being. He's going to drive at a speed where he feels safe and yet where he can get where he's going as quickly as possible. The concept being, if you set the speed limit where 85% of the people are going at or below, then the only people going above that speed are those that are really driving foolishly and dangerously. If the 85 percentile rule is used on our New York State Thruway right now, the speed limit will be somewhere between 70 and 75.
I've had a self-imposed general rule. Actually, not self-imposed. A California highway patrolman told me this many years ago when I lived out there. He said, if you do not go faster than the flow of traffic, chances are you'll never get stopped, even if the flow is over the 65. In other words, if everybody out there is doing 70 and you're doing 70, chances are you won't get stopped. It's only if everybody's doing 70 and you do 75 or 80.
Yeah, there's some truth to that, but I've had instances where someone's been pulled over in the middle of the night with no other traffic around, and he'd say, but officer, I was just going with the flow. So what is the flow? Essentially, every officer gives you a certain tolerance, a certain number of miles per hour above the speed limit.
Oh, they do?
Oh, sure. No. Do you know anyone that's been ticketed for 56 and a 55 lately? They want to do this because, first off, they don't want to ticket somebody who doesn't think they were speeding. And so they allow you a certain amount of tolerance. The trick is to figure out what that tolerance is and drive within it.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go public. Maybe you have questions to ask a gentleman who may have given you a ticket at one time or another. He was a member of the New York State Police, Sargent James M. Eagan, now retired. He writes a book in which he talks about the facts of life, the truth about cops and traffic stops, care and feeding of Smokey the Bear. That's an interesting chapter. And a whole host of other illuminating insights that he shares with us via his book. He's Sergeant James M. Eagan, and you can talk to the sergeant in just a moment. There's a speeder by the name of Steve on the line right now. Yeah, Steve, you want to talk to the sergeant? Go ahead. Steve, are you there? I guess he got chicken. He got scared. This happens sometimes. People, once they're announced on the air, they decide they don't want to do it. Bruce, we'll try you. Hello, Bruce.
Hi, Bob. I'd like to ask Mr. Eagan, what type of car, if any, is more likely to be pulled over than any other kind of car?
Good question.
Well, essentially, it's not so much the kind of car it is. Basically, because the radar unit is used so much these days, it's whoever breaks the magic number that the officer has set it at. However, if you are driving a sporty-looking car, you might be more apt to irritate the officer. One thing you want to keep in mind is the sportier the car, the more likely you have these tinted windows. And they don't like the tinted windows. They don't like them because they can't see in. And one of the things that I try to teach you is how to reduce the concerns of the officer during the traffic stop. Those windows don't permit him to see in, and it's going to make him a little more hinky.
Well, there's no, they don't target a clunker or a Volvo or something like that they wouldn't stop, even if they're going a little over the speed limit.
I will tell you this, whatever car you drive, keep it as clean as possible, inside and out. You want to become a likable individual to that officer. You got about 30 seconds to convince him that he doesn't want to write you a ticket. That's hard, but it can be done. And the important thing is to keep your car neat and clean.
What about getting out of the car? Is that...
Never do it.
No, you don't do that.
Not unless the officer tells you to get out of the car or asks you to get out of the car. Sit right there with your hands on the steering wheel. Then he's in control. But if you get out of the car, it almost telegraphs to him immediately confrontation or problem, and that's what you want to avoid.
There's some people who are under the impression that it shows respect that you're stopping and getting out. And
well, you can show the best respect by sitting there with your four-way flashers on and your hands on the steering wheel where he can see them. He has two primary concerns that I address in the book, and one of those two primary concerns is fear. And by that, I don't mean cops are cowardly, not at all. What I'm saying is it's a dangerous profession, and they have to address this every time they pull someone over. And so we want to reduce that fear just as quickly as possible, so it's one less concern he has while dealing with you.
Yes, and I've read, I think it was from your book, that certain types of bumper stickers might not be advisable either.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I recommend that you walk around your car entirely. Not just the bumper stickers, but any stickers on the windows or the contents of your car, perhaps hats, etc. Will someone find this offensive? Murphy's Law being what it is.
If I take a chance.
That's correct.
Thank you very much.
All right. Okay, on WABC, I know a lot of folks who live in New Jersey have Scud Florio or Dump Florio, and that makes them very popular having those bumper stickers on. Danny, you're on WABC. Hello.
Hey, Bob, long-time listener. I'd like to ask Trooper Eagan a question, if I could.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm from upstate New York, and I was recently pulled over maybe a couple months ago, and I was issued 5 tickets. Speeding, 77 and a 55, aggravated unlicensed driver, no inspection, unregistered, and running a stop sign. Now, I pleaded not guilty, and I asked for a supporting deposition. My supporting deposition came 30 days after I had asked for it, which is there's a law in New York that says if that happens, the tickets may be dismissed in the court. And I was in court with the trooper the first time, and normally you could plead with the trooper and they'll drop some tickets, and he wasn't willing to do that. So I obtained an attorney for my trial, and we went with the dismissal on the tickets with the thing where he could resubmit them. And as soon as I was outside the courtroom, in front of my attorney, I was arrested on charges of acclamation where they could reissue the tickets. I was wondering how I could go around the next court date and try to work things out better.
You've already done the best thing possible. You've contacted an attorney. I suggest perhaps you should have contacted him a little bit sooner, right as soon as you decided that you had, frankly, the degree of problem that you've got. If you were sick, you call a doctor. With the type of tickets that you've got, you need the attorney, and that would be the best place to go for the advice. What my book addresses is how to avoid getting those things in the first place.
All right. Good luck, Danny. Let's try Greg checking in right now. And, of course, on WABC, nobody was there. Nobody was on the line there, so we'll try Dave. Hello, Dave.
Hi, Bob. I got a question for James there about insurance rates. This may be out of the book. I don't know whether you talk about it or not. But in light of the fact that ticketing is a money-making business, as you say, when you get a speeding ticket, you automatically get 4 points, and your insurance rates go up. It's aggravating.
And don't forget that surcharge, that flim-flam slipped through and nobody noticed.
That's it.
Yeah.
Let me put it to you very bluntly. I wrote this book for the interstate driver, the guy that drives along the highway right now at 70 to 75 miles per hour, perhaps a traveling businessman. He's a safe driver. Chances are he is not going to have an accident. The insurance companies can't get at him. The only way that they can get at him is if a ticket is written. So guess who lobbies for these low speeding limits, particularly in states such as New York?
Insurance companies.
Why, of course.
That explains it. Sure.
It's financially lucrative for them, and they're going after this is one thing that bothers me. They say there's been so many accidents due to speed, but they don't mention the fact that the majority of these accidents that are allegedly due to speed are during inclement weather. An officer might investigate 20 of those on a bad winter day. None of those people were even going near 55. During a nice summer day, the cars go whipping by him at 70 all day long, and in all probability, he won't investigate an accident at all.
All right?
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Yes, indeed. The sergeant is really giving us some honest information here. You're on WABC. Hello.
Yeah, Bob.
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
All right, a question for your guest. What I'd like to know is, does a radar detector in your car, if it's legal in the state, does that anger the trooper when they pull you over in any way?
Okay, good question. What about a radar detector?
I coined the term premeditated speeding. You want to be an innocent, likable guy who really had no intention of speeding. By using a radar detector, if the officer knows you have it, you've almost guaranteed the fact that you're going to get a ticket. There are a couple things you have to learn how to do. First, how to hide it before you get pulled over. And secondly, how to drive so the officer doesn't realize you have it at the time he catches you. Most people are caught on what's called moving radar with an instant on-off button. And when he pushes that button on a radar unit, he not only gets your speed, but he sees the blue smoke rolling off the rear tires at the same time the front bumper is almost touching the ground. And he knows that he just got caught. And so he's aware that you have a radar detector. You have to learn to drive differently if you're using one, but they are a very good tool.
In the state of Virginia, I believe they're outlawed.
I don't think they're supposed to have them in New York if they're driving trucks right now, but this is something else that the insurance companies have taken a very active interest in. They want to do away with those radar detectors because, God forbid, we'll cut down on their profit margin.
The insurance companies never have enough, do they?
No, they don't. Show that it's in fact you. How does he know which vehicle is kicking off his radar detector? Keep in mind, I'm sure our electronics industry will come out with a radar detector before too long.
Never stop. Sergeant, thank you. Bob, a timely guest, and thank you, too.
All right. On WABC, Carl, you're on WABC with Bob Grant and Sergeant Eagan. Go ahead, please.
Thanks, Bob. Hi, James.
How are you?
I traveled the New York Thruway quite extensively from New York up to Buffalo, And one time I was stopped near Albany, and one of the things that the trooper said to me was that he pretty much goes for the 70-mile guy. In other words, if you can keep it just under 70 miles, he's not going to bother you. Now, is that pretty much the way most of you guys handle it, or is it...
What you're talking about is the tolerance level. How many miles per hour will they get? Mm-hmm. I don't want to say yes or no to your question because I don't want some poor guy to go out there and put his speedometer at 69 and find out that he's got oversized tires and suddenly get popped. And then say, geez, you know, that wasn't supposed to happen.
Uh-huh.
I'll tell you this, what you're saying has a lot of validity in many places.
Okay.
All right.
It does. And one other thing, I was stopped once near Rochester, and the officer was really nice. He kept asking me because I said, I'm sure I wasn't speeding. I'm sure I wasn't speeding. And he kept saying, well, what were you doing? What did the speedometer read? And what he was hinting at, which he finally came out and said, was he gave me a ticket not for speeding, but for a probable speedometer problem. And if I got a report in the next town from anyone that they checked the speedometer and just gave me some kind of note, that I can beat the ticket. What was that all about?
All right, essentially it's a break that the police try to give some people. If it's a equipment violation in New York State, the officer is at liberty to issue something called a TB-37, which essentially it was originally just for lighting and then extended to other equipment benches. And if you can get it fixed within 24 hours by an inspection station, you mail that in with a ticket and the ticket is dismissed.
That's exactly what he told me. If I can go to some inspection station but it wasn't fixed. All he said was if I just have it checked, that along with that checking.
Well, by checking it, he knew in his own mind that your speedometer was in fact working. He was just throwing a brake to you.
Exactly.
One of the things that I teach you in the book is ask for the brake. Ask him for a little consideration. Point out the fact of how high the insurance rates are, which he's paying insurance too. He knows what it's like. And ask him, geez, if you must give me a ticket, would you please, give me some type of reduction? Because any brake you can cut on the side of the road is a lot easier than any brake you can cut in court and a lot cheaper.
Mm-hmm. Good luck, Carl. Thank you very much. We'll continue on WABC, where the time is now 8 minutes before 5. And let's get back to our telephones and back to James Eagan and how to avoid speeding tickets. Go ahead, George.
How are you, gentlemen?
Very good.
Just a quick question for Mr. Eagan.
Mm-hmm.
Do those PBA cards or DEA cards that I see in people's windows, do those reduce the risk of tickets?
Well, you're talking two things, the sticker or the card. In a Speeder's Guide to Avoiding Tickets, I recommend that you do, if you purchase such a thing, which is actually what you're doing, although it's called a donation, put the sticker on the window and don't say any more about it. If you're going to offer that card to a police officer without anything else attached to it as far as comments are concerned, basically what you're saying is, I think I bought my way out of this ticket and I expect to be rewarded. What I suggest that you do is if you're going to use the ticket, have an officer's name. Say something to the effect that, gee, Officer Jones mentioned the fact that if I ever get stopped, I should, show you this. And it will work a lot better that way.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. WABC, let's say hello to Seth. Hello, Seth.
Hi. Yeah, I got a question about Pennsylvania, although you're from New York State. But in Pennsylvania, when you cross the border from New Jersey, if you're going west on Interstate 80, there'll be signs that say if you're going 56, the fact that there's no tolerance in Pennsylvania, and they keep repeating the signs. They even list the fines on a big billboard. Is there any truth to that?
Well, there's a preset fine. Sure there is. But whether anybody's ever convicted of that or not remains to be seen. What I suggest you do is drop a letter to one of the judges there. I even put a sample copy in the back of my book, asking them essentially such questions as how many tickets a month do you handle, and of those, how many are for, say, 56 and 55, and how many are for 58, how many are for 60. The judges don't mind if you find that information out. What you'll find out is there are very few below 65 or 70 in a 55 zone, and essentially those are reductions.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, it might interest you to know, Seth, that James Eagan and I were chatting privately before, and I told him a couple of states that I thought were very tough, and he said, yeah, you're right. He said, and you could add to that Pennsylvania and Ohio.
Supposedly Maryland, I haven't been down there in a while, but they used to say on I-95 that they were very tough, even for the past years, for people going over 55. Now they got a speed ticket blitz on in New Jersey all over. Okay, thank you.
All right. Jim, you're on WABC. Hello, Jim.
Hello, Bob. Hello, Sergeant Eagan.
How are you?
My question is, I've never been pulled over for speeding. I've gotten a ticket yet. And not that I haven't done those things, but just been fortunate enough not to have gotten one. My brother's a police officer in New York. But his advice is to apologize and to recognize that you were speeding and then to give his name.
There's nothing wrong with that advice, but the way I would do it would be to say my brother, who's a police officer in New York City, was over the house just the other day and kind of teasing me about this. I sure hope I don't get a ticket because he'll never let me live it down. You've gotten the point across without being quite so obvious.
Thank you.
Okay, that's a very diplomatic way of putting it. You get the message across, of course. Mark, you're on WABC. Hello.
Okay, thanks a lot, Bob. Sergeant Eagan, I'm a salesman, and I drive about 1,000 miles a week, and right now I'm using a radar detector very successfully. My concern, though, is I've read in a recent Car and Driver that New York State is testing a new laser system, so it doesn't use the radar waves, microwaves, it's using a light beam. Have you heard anything about this?
Oh, I've heard a lot about it. They're definitely out there. They're extremely expensive, and New York State has very few of them at this time. They are the thing of the future, and you can rest assured our electronics industry will come up with a laser detector about the time you need it.
Have you heard of any way that, as with the bras that they had for cars just to avoid the pebbles and things of that nature, that anything like that or similar to that is giving them a problem?
You're looking for a stealth car? They haven't built one yet.
Well, not a stealth car, but something to at least give that problems. What section of New York are they using those lasers?
My guess would be, I can't tell you for sure, but my guess would be someplace close to Albany because that's where the state police did most of their testing in the past.
Thank you very much, Mark. And to those of you who weren't able to make contact maybe in the future, the sergeant has 11 places he's got to visit in 8 days. Everybody's interested in a Speeder's Guide to Avoiding Tickets. Sergeant Eagan, I appreciate you coming in, and I hope that everybody gets your book.
Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
I'm going to give him a ticket as he goes out because he doesn't know that I have... Anyway, it's 5 o'clock.
From ABC News.